Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Geo Trip. Joining us today is Tramond Baisden. Tramond is a production geologist supporting oil and gas development in the deep water of Gulf of Mexico. He's currently NABG's president for the term 2022 to 2024. NABG standing for National Association of Black Geoscientists. Tramond holds a bachelor's in mathematics from Fort Valley State University with a second bachelor's and master's in geology from Penn State. He enjoys spending time outdoors and traveling with his wife, Leela, and their two girls, Kendall and River. Tramond, welcome. I am so excited to have you here today. And audience, I have to say because Dr. Prince is out there having a summer without us. So we'll talk about that at the end of this episode. But Tramond, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here on the Geo Trip podcast and honored that you all would take some time to highlight NABG on your podcast. So thank you for having me.
Perfect. I think we're just going to jump right in because there's so much we want to talk to you about. You've been a hard nut to pin down. You have like the most dynamic schedule. So, can you tell our audience a little bit about your geo story and the route you took to your professional role, including how you became president of NABG?
Yeah, sure. So anytime I tell this story, I always give it from the frame of how geoscience found me. So I grew up in Southwest Atlanta, Georgia, and the only rocks that I ever saw were the ones that I dug up in my front yard. Living in Atlanta, right? Geoscience isn't really a prominent idea. I think I took one earth science class in maybe 8th grade. And so like outside of Stone Mountain, people really don't talk about rocks or the earth much for that matter. But, as a kid, I was always kind of interested in science. I was a tinkerer, taking things apart, trying to figure out how they work. And I thought that was going to lead me down a career path in engineering. But I think it was in 7th grade when one of my teachers gave me a flyer for a program at Fort Valley State University called the Math, Science, and Engineering Academy, which is primarily purposed in increasing participation of women and minorities in the energy industry. And so every summer from my 9th grade year up until the summer before I started my senior year of college, I spent a week or two with this program at Fort Valley State, traveling around the country, learning about various disciplines in engineering, as well as the geosciences. I completed that program and ended up accepting a full ride scholarship to Fort Valley with the Cooperative Developmental Energy Program, CDEP, and began to pursue my bachelor's degree in mathematics. But how CDEP works is it's a dual degree program. So you spend 3 years at Fort Valley studying either math, chemistry, or biology, and then transfer to one of the partner institutions, which at the time were like Georgia Tech, UT Austin, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Penn State, and Arkansas. And so jumping to like 2008, 2009, my first year in college, I was still, pretty interested in engineering. And I thought that my partner school was going to be Georgia Tech, and I was going to go there for computer engineering. My spring semester first year, I took a programming course, and I was like, don't really think this is the path that I want to go down. And at that time, I had also been taking a few geoscience courses with Dr. Carr, who essentially was the geology department at Fort Valley. I really enjoyed the classes. And I think what I really liked the most was being able to tell stories, right? So geology is really all about pulling together data to try to understand what Earth was like in the past and use that to try to predict what Earth might be like in the future. And that was a really fun thing for me. It allowed me to focus on my scientific curiosity, but also be a bit more of a storyteller and embrace some of the creativity that comes with that. So fast forward again to the summer of 2010, I did a summer research program at Penn State through the Africa Array program, and actually got to spend 3 weeks in South Africa on the geophysics field course. And that really solidified my career path. I guess to go back a little bit, after I decided I didn't want to do computer engineering, I thought, well, maybe petroleum engineering would be cool because it, still a very technical subject. And taking some of that interest in geology, I thought I'd be able to pair those two well. But it was really that geophysics field course that, allowed me to get outside, spend a lot of time outdoors, which is probably one of my favorite things to do now. And then just learning about the technology that geologists and geophysicists use, particularly in the oil and gas industry, that allowed me to marry kind of all of my interest in technology, spending time outdoors, and being able to be a storyteller. So I ended up deciding to attend Penn State for my second degree in geosciences. Love the time that I spent there with some really great people, great instructors, and wonderful geology in and around central Pennsylvania. I liked it so much that I didn't apply to grad school there until the last day, the application deadline, because I was dead set on getting back down south and somewhere warm. But Dr. Carr was like, yeah, you should go ahead and apply. So I did. And I ended up spending another 2 years in state college and wrapped up my master's in geosciences in 2015. And then once I finished school there, I moved down to New Orleans to begin working at Shell as a production geologist. And I've been with the company ever since. So I think my story is a cool one because it kind of illustrates, how people can stumble or find their way into fields that they might not otherwise have been exposed to or had a big interest in. But ultimately, I'm really happy with the path that my trajectory has taken me on since seventh grade till now. I guess the other part of that is kind of my involvement in NABG. So while I was at Fort Valley, I think I attended my first NABG conference in 2009 or 10 in Arkansas. So at this point, I've been active with the organization for nearly 15 years. But the really exciting thing about NABG is that you get to be in a room with a bunch of people who look like you, who might have similar upbringing, similar cultures as you, but we all come together to, share science, but also to build community as Black geoscientists, because there aren't a ton of us. And, I think it's really important that we have that community to look out for each other and be able to have those open discussions about things that we face as Black geoscientists. So for that reason, NABG is a very powerful organization.
Wow, Tramond. I mean, so many gems in that one introduction. So, I'm going to give my audience a second to kind of digest it. But I just want to highlight three major things that you said before I dive into a little bit about NABG and what it is. I love the fact that you started off with how geoscience found you. And that's so important because one of the things we've learned, especially when we are talking and building community amongst our underrepresented geoscientists and fellow community members in STEM, is the fact that we typically start off in environments where we haven't had that STEM exposure or necessarily been granted the opportunities to explore these spaces. So typically, once we enter these fields, it's because they kind of found us. Our interest peaked, or we got a flyer, or we found out some information. And that's why networking and community building is really important and sustainable as we think about making these fields more equitable. So I love that you shared how it found you, not how you stumbled, but literally how it found you and how you maintained it. And I love that you highlighted the program out at Fort Valley. So I just want to say, hey, Dr. Carr, Dr. Crumley, because even though I did not go to Fort Valley, myself and many members of NABG have interacted with these staples in the community who just continue to encourage us, which brings us to NABG, right? NABG audience members, for those of you who may have missed it, the acronym stands for National Association of Black Geoscientists. And NABG really is a great organization / conference. And I like to call it the family conference because it's a safe space where you get to present your work. So Tramond, I cannot wait to start talking to you a little bit about it. But before we do you mind giving our audience members just a little bit of a brief history about NABG?
Sure. So I guess in the late 70s, early 80s, a small group of Black geologists and geophysicists from across the country, but mostly focused in Houston and Denver, which, have traditionally been the oil and gas hub of America. They came together and started to discuss the idea of pulling together an organization where, one, they could build community, and two, also usher in the next generation of Black geoscientists. So officially in 1981, the organization was founded for those two distinct purposes. And it's really cool because a lot of the founders are actually still active within the organization today. So I think that's one thing that NABG offers that a lot of organizations probably don't. But yeah, over the years, NABG, well, it was originally founded as the National Association of Black Geologists and Geophysicists. And a lot of that was really kind of back to the focus on, most of the people within the organization belonging to the oil and gas industry. But yeah, since the 80s, we've been really committed to our mission of building community as well as developing the next generation of geoscientists. And what that looks like is, well, I guess, one, our keynote event of the year is always our annual technical conference. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that later. But that's like a coming together of, somewhere in the order of 100, 150 Black geoscientists and allies who support the diversification and equity within the geoscientists to share science, come together as a community, discuss what kind of issues we're facing as Black geoscientists, as well as having an opportunity to gain internship opportunities, full-time jobs, research opportunities for folks who are looking for grad school. And it's also where we award our scholarships. So a lot of what goes into the conference, again, relates directly back to our mission. And then outside of the conference, we spend a lot of effort in the space of outreach, as well as, providing some spaces for folks to come together in the last few years too, digitally. So whether that's Zoom webinars or, some virtual happy hours, things of that nature, we want to make sure that we're continuing to have an impact on folks outside of the conference. And I guess another interesting tidbit on the actual name of the organization. So in the early to mid 2000s, we actually transitioned from NABGG, the Geology and Geophysics, to the National Association of Black Geoscientists, in order to reflect, one, our changing demographic, but also to be more inclusive outside of people that are working in earth science, not necessarily in oil and gas. So now we have folks that come in ranging from atmospheric and climate science to environmental justice. So we're really trying to touch every little corner of the geosciences now.
Tramond, thank you so much for that answer. And sharing the fun fact about NABG evolving from NABGG. If you know people. The history with this organization is so deep, so rich and so familial. I think that's one of the greatest aspects of it. So like you said, and I know you touched on it a little bit earlier regarding how you found out about NABG, attending your first conference in Arkansas. Fun fact, audience, that's the first time I kind of met Tramond, actually. I was going to grad school there. So it's such a full circle moment getting to talk to him as professionals in this setting. But can you also tell us a little bit about what made you run for president of this organization? I'm interested in that story, and I'm sure our audience members are too.
Well, for one, I don't think I had any kids at that point, and I wasn't as busy as I was at work. So I thought I had some time to take on some additional responsibility. But no, in all seriousness, NABG is dear to my heart. And getting back to your point about how important outreach is, I've had a lot of people along the way who've helped to guide me on my journey and help me to reach the point that I'm at. And so I've always been really big on giving back. That's one of the main reasons why I ran for president. The other being, I've been, very involved with the organization, especially over the last 5 years. Served as the conference chair at least once. And I've been very heavily involved with the conference planning committee since 2019. So I've got to see a lot of the intricacies and the inner workings of the organization. But I was also excited to bring a fresh perspective. So in our last election cycle, I want to say a solid 80, 90% of the folks that were running for positions were under the age of 40. our last executive board was definitely filled with more seasoned members. But being that, our organization now skews towards the younger side with a lot of focus on our students, I'm happy that we've been able to bring in some folks to bring in some fresh perspectives and kind of update some things with how the organization has been run and kind of define a new vision for how we can be impactful in the 2020s. And so kind of bringing all of that together, right? NABG, like I said, is really near and dear to my heart. And I thought I had some really good ideas and some good folks joining or at least running for positions that, we'd be able to bring some welcome change to the organization and make sure that we're kind of delivering on what we set out to, and also ensuring that the voice of our students is heard when we go into planning and thinking about what NABG needs to continue to look like.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're going to touch on the voice of the students in a little bit because there's some exciting things that y'all are adding to the conference this year that I would love to share with the audience. But I just want to backtrack a little bit and say congratulations to you and the new executive team. I love the change that I'm seeing. I myself have also been involved with NABG since about 2008, thanks to Dr. Byron Winston and many of the fellows, Roxanne Lamb, etc. So it's really interesting watching the evolution, because this new exec, kind of the idea I'm getting sitting in on meetings, the energy that I'm feeling is that y'all are taking all of the gems provided from our legacy membership, our seasoned members, and y'all are just kind of building on it. It's not a reinvention of the wheel, but it's actually an enhancement process for the continuity and the sustainability of the organization. And I think that's so exciting, seeing how you guys pay homage to, or seeing how you all are paying homage to our legacy, but also moving it forward. And with that, I just kind of want to highlight the fact that when COVID occurred, there was a digital conference, which was amazing. You felt like you were still surrounded by family, having these conversations using the various digital tools. So with that being said, I kind of want to touch on a little bit. As president, you have a 2-year term, but I know you're heavily involved, have been involved. So what are some of the things you'd like to see regarding the growth of the organization over the next 5 years, whether it's related to the conference or external programming? Can you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I first, let me thank you for highlighting the fact that, what we're doing now is not totally revamping the organization. We literally stand on the shoulders of giants who've done a tremendous amount of work to bring the organization to where it is today. So thinking about folks like Mike Carroll, Reggie Spiller, Ken Yarbrough, and a whole host of other folks who've been around since the beginning. They had a fantastic idea with building this community and organizing NABG. And I think the impact that the organization has had over the last 5 decades kind of speaks for itself. So definitely appreciative of the folks who've come before us and kind of set a foundation for us to build upon. And so kind of looking to the future, what NABG to me will look like in the next 5 years. We've spent a significant amount of effort over the last couple of years to improve our digital presence. I mean, we actually just launched a brand new website. So if folks out there haven't seen it yet, navigate to nabg-us.org and check out our new website. A lot of work went into getting this thing off the ground, and I'm really happy with the results there. So now we have a cleaner online hub for folks to come and learn about the organization, what we do, and see how they can get involved. And along those lines, kind of to what you spoke on with the virtual conference, right? Increasing our digital presence. So pretty much everybody now is walking around with a smartphone in their hand, and they're tweeting or Xing, I guess is what we might call it now. They're on Instagram, they're communicating with the folks on Slack, they're building community on the internet. And, one thing that is just an artifact on the, relatively low number of Black geoscientists, unless you're at, a few schools where we have seen maybe 4 or 5 Black geoscientists, you're probably the only one in your department which is the same in itself, but that's where we want to come in and make sure that we have a space for folks to connect outside of conferences, whether it's NABG or AAPG or AGU, even just having a virtual space where folks can come together and, whatever the topic of the day might be, whether it's discussing the science, whether it's talking about how you feel isolated within your geoscience department, we want folks to be able to communicate and not just a few times a year. So we've got some folks, students also involved in this effort to actually create a virtual community for us. So be on the lookout for more information on that one soon. In terms of our impact, one thing that we're planning to do at the conference this year is to kind of reignite and get back to our roots of developing the next generation of geoscientists. So we're partnering with an organization called NEED, which is the National Energy Education Development Program, to host some high schoolers in the DC area where the conference will be and do some hands-on activities with them, exposing them to various career paths in the geosciences, as well as having a bit of a panel discussion with some NABG members. Again, outreach is so important in those early intervention programs where you can get in front of a kid and let them know that math and science aren't the hardest thing in the world before you have a bunch of people telling them that, this is difficult and maybe they should pursue some other career path. Instilling that confidence in them early, I think is crucial. And then lastly, in terms of the size of the organization, I'll say we've seen continuous growth over the last few years in attendance to our annual conferences. So last year, I think we had nearly 200 people registered for the conference in Houston. And I expect we'll be close to that number for DC this fall. And so by, partnering with some other organizations like GSA, AGU, and maybe holding some joint events, we can kind of expand our reach and help those students who are a bit more isolated find a home in NABG. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that's probably our biggest goal and biggest ambition, to make sure that, if there are some Black geoscience students out there or students that are working tangentially in the geosciences, that they know that we exist and this is a safe space for them to come and be seen, be heard, and be a part of our community.
Thank you for sharing some of these proposed plans. I just want to highlight how excited I am about it. I love the fact that the organization is reaching out to do work with high school students pre-college acceptance, because that's one of the things, if we're really being honest, we've learned. A lot of students, underrepresented, specifically Black students, but more in large BIPOC students, they've sometimes been shied away or shunned away from these math and science classes in college because of these preconceived notions instilled. So it's really nice having representation where students see those in professional settings or in more advanced academic roles who are embracing or have survived. I use the term survived because I know I survived calculus. Seeing people who look like them in these roles, right? This is why representation matters. This is why NABG exists. This is why Big Black in Geoscience as a virtual platform exists. This is why NABG and Big are working together, because we are one and the same, right? We're here to promote this advancement, this community building, and this support of systems. So I just want to say special shout out and also acknowledge the fact that even though within the titles, the word Black exists, and we are here to center, uplift, and amplify these voices, the conference itself, the organizations themselves are not limited to just Black members or Black participants. It's for everyone in the geoscience field working to build community or trying to create more sustainable practices for underrepresented groups within the field. Because look at the statistics, look at what we're reading in the research. These spaces are sometimes hostile. And so it's about anybody supporting or creating safe spaces. And I think that's something that I've always been proud to share about NABG, the fact that it's a welcoming space for all.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say this, if that wasn't clear enough for you listeners, It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from. If you believe in supporting Black geoscientists, diversifying the geoscientists, and making this a safe space for all, you are absolutely welcome to participate in NABG. Our arms are open.
And with those open arms and participation, that main program coming up is the conference. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about the upcoming conference, please?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, our annual technical conference is really our highlight event of the year. And this year we'll be celebrating 42 years of NABG in Washington, D.C. We're actually hosting the conference at the conference center of the American Geophysical Union, AGU, who has been a strong supporter and ally to NABG for many years. So really excited to kind of embrace that connection that we have there. I'm really excited for this year. The theme is Geoscience United, so a little play on the DC United soccer team. But yeah, Geoscience United, collaborating for a sustainable and equitable future. Environmental justice, climate change, all of those, that has been like very hot topics over the last year. And so when we were brainstorming ideas, thinking about where we would be in DC and being able to kind of interface with all of the federal agencies that are there, and thinking about some of the recent legislation that's been passed. So specifically thinking about like the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the funds that have been earmarked towards environmental justice. We thought that the theme that we selected would be kind of right on time. And what the theme really means to me is thinking about how we as geoscientists play a role in one, harnessing and bringing society into the next generation of energy use, whether that be some form of renewables or a mix, as well as understanding how the impacts of climate change will impact communities around the globe, noting that Black and brown communities will be disproportionately affected. And we're already seeing that today. Thinking about the role that we play in ensuring that our communities are educated and prepared for what the future of energy and the future of climate looks like. So we'll have some really interesting sessions, of course, with oral and poster presentations by students and professionals. And we're still brainstorming a few ideas for interactive panel discussions and talks, but you can expect to hear things related to digitalization in the geosciences. So how we use new tools to streamline some of the processes and workflows that, we've done for years as geoscientists. Thinking about how geoscience plays a role in sustainability. So kind of getting back to energy, as well as use of natural resources. And then we've got some special events that I don't want to say too much about yet, because I don't know exactly what they'll look like, but potentially some panel discussions talking about various career paths outside of what you might think as traditional geology careers. So thinking about what role we play in things like policy and politics, as well as economics, when it comes to business decisions that are being made within the geosciences. So it should be a really great conference. We'll wrap up the weekend on Saturday with the field trip to Great Falls, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., but a beautiful park that's a part of the national park system. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. It is a little bit later in September this year. Generally, we're earlier in the month, but based off of some scheduling things, we'll be in DC from the 27th through the 30th. And conference registration information is available on our website. So again, nabg-us.org. You can easily find conference information and registration there.
Tramond, thank you. Perfect. And thanks for giving the disclaimer about quote unquote, not sure exactly what it is, because I was actually going to bring up those exciting new things, but I know they're still under wraps until we get confirmation from the speakers. So I'm going to leave that hanging in the air. And I'm going to ask you just two more things about the conference for our audience members. So conference sounds great. There's these older themes, new themes, all merging together, coming together. It's gonna be an amazing weekend of science, community building, familiar faces. But for those of us who may not be able to make it to DC, are there any other options for us to attend the conference? Or what about those of us who actually want to help sponsor? Because one thing, NABG is completely voluntarily run. Everyone who is working in the backgrounds, whether it's executive members, conference planners, teams, it's all volunteer time, non-paid services. So we, and I say we because I am a current member of NABG, but NABG depends on sponsorship. So any information about that for anyone who would be interested in sponsoring?
Absolutely. We love our sponsors. We love our donors. You really are the lifeblood of the organization and helping us to create the impact that we do. And your question actually reminded me of one other thing. So this year we've been pretty involved with trying to pull students in to volunteer. And another event that we're currently working on is having a bit of I guess you can call it like a wind down session with students for you all to come together, whether it be at a restaurant or bar. We're still working out the details there, but just a kind of like happy hour type event for folks to come together and continue to build community and unwind after spending all day in the long technical conference. So that's another thing to be on the lookout for. In terms of volunteers, we're definitely still looking for folks to help with planning the conference, as well as some folks that will help with some logistics during the conference. That information is also available on our website. And if you are already a member of NABG, you should have received some emails detailing what we're looking for with volunteers. Lastly, on the sponsorship side, we have a bunch of opportunities for sponsors to further their mission, their organization's mission, as well as get some brand recognition through the conference. So if you log on to nabgus.org under the conference dropdown, there is a page for sponsorship. So we have several levels of general sponsorship as well as specific sponsorship for events during the conference. The range of benefits for the sponsors outside of the brand recognition, either through the conference booklet or signage around the conference. You'll gain access to the resume booklet of attendees if you're looking for interns, full-time employees, or students. And, we're really, really excited and hoping that we can reach out to some more sponsors. And hopefully from this platform, we get some access to some folks that maybe we haven't been engaged with before. But you can definitely head to our website to learn a lot more about our impact as an organization and how you can help to further that.
Tramond, thank you so much for sharing. And last but not least, for those of us who can't necessarily attend in person, did you mention that there was a digital or virtual option for us?
Right. Sorry, that was the other part of your question. The conference will be broadcast on Zoom. So there is an option to register as a virtual attendee. The virtual content will not be as, involved as the in-person experience as you might imagine. So all of the sessions that we'll have in the main conference room will be broadcast, but there are the poster session will be in a different space. So that won't be available, but you will get to hear all oral presentations during the conference. So virtual is absolutely an option. And after the conference is over, we'll have all materials shared online for you to review.
Wow, Tramond, thank you so much. I know I've been just asking questions and digging in and trying to pry out information, but it's only because I'm so excited about this conference and I'm excited about DC and just everything the organization stands for. So thank you so much for being here. I mean, it's been amazing talking to you and just hearing your passion and your love for an organization that you're now the president of. And as someone who's been involved for many, many years, it's really amazing seeing this full circle moment because I met you as a student and now to be talking to you as our fearless leader or the organization's fearless leader. I cannot even elaborate how special of a moment this is for me. You provided us with such great information today. Looking forward to seeing the conference this year as always. And just kind of talking to everyone and visiting with everyone again. So kind of want to wrap up now, but before I let you go, I have to do one formal thing because we here at the GeoTrip believe in balance. So aside from all that great information that you shared with us about NABG and just also a little bit about your geo story, we want to share a little individual insight about you with our guests. So
Sure.
welcome to Hot Potato. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
So how Hot Potato works, if you're not familiar with it, audience members, is we throw out a question to our guests and we hope that they give us the first answer that comes to mind so we learn a little bit about them. So for those of you who may have missed it, Tramond is originally an Atlanta gentleman and he now lives in Houston. However, he also went to school at Penn State. So first question, are you a wildcat or a lion?
I am absolutely a wildcat. I spent my Saturday mornings in bed watching Georgia football and not watching Penn State.
Man. So favorite city then, Atlanta or Houston?
Tough one. If my family were not in Atlanta, I would say Houston, but because Atlanta is home, all of my people are there. And the city has definitely changed a lot since I grew up, but it will always be number one for me. So Atlanta.
Beautiful answer. Audience, if you haven't recognized by now, Tramond is such a family man. I actually kind of chuckle and call him a girl dad, and he's all about community. And I think that's one of the nicest things any leader can have. You're welcome. So last show you binge watch. Do you even have time to watch TV anymore?
We put the girls down at like 7:30 every night. So we get at least like an hour and a half every night to watch something. And so the last show that we binge watched, what did we just finish? The Bear season 2 was the last thing that we watched. Really good show on Netflix. And I don't know if you watched Shameless on Showtime or not, but I feel like
loved it.
I feel like Carmi is just a continuation of Lip from Shameless. So much chaos, but really good show.
Okay, you've just sold me on bumping The Bear up to my watch list. And I have to admit, I was secretly hoping it was going to be Gracie's Corner. So you just kind of disappointed me there.
No, we get enough. Well, actually, Kendall is on a super Disney trip right now. So we're Disney princess every Saturday morning.
Audience, Tramond is dad to 2 beautiful girls. I silently and shamelessly stalk them on Instagram because his daughters have personality and his wife is just amazing. So I'm just own it. So last 2 questions. Tramond, I know you like music. So trap music or Southern hip hop?
Oh, they're kind of both the same in my eyes. So what if I had to choose between like the Migos and Outkast? I'm going with Cast for sure.
And I'm just gonna leave it there because I want people to continue tuning in. So last but not least, you mentioned the little play on the conference theme, which as a football, and when I say football, I mean EPL. As an EPL fan, I was very excited because MLS is taking off. So I got to ask you, NFL or real football?
Those are the same thing if you ask me.
Excuse me.
I'm a diehard Falcons fan for better or for worse, much likely for worse. But yeah, I got into soccer a little bit when the Atlanta United expansion team started in the mid 2010s. I got a jersey. I watched the championship game before the Braves won the World Series a couple years ago. That was the first championship we had in the city in a very long time. So yeah, I enjoy watching soccer. I think it's really exciting, but at the end of the day, I'm going to tune in every Sunday to NFL. Yeah, it's in my blood at this point.
Tramond, thank you for being such a good sport. I'm going to have to send you some Chelsea football gear for the girls so that you could understand what real football feels like when I send you an EPL schedule. But I just want to say, having you on this episode of the Geo Trip to discuss your Geo story and National Association of Black Geoscientists and the upcoming conference has been such a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I know we've only touched on the tip of the iceberg here today, but please know you and the organization, executive members or student volunteer members, y'all have an open invitation to return. We love amplifying our colleagues. We love talking about our community. So as we close out, please let our listeners know where they can follow or contact you, especially in regards to the conference.
Absolutely. So your main point of contact for us is going to be through our website again, nabgus-us.org, nabg-us.org. All of the organization information as well as conference information and how you can register to attend is online. And another plug here. So for students, we receive funding from the National Science Foundation, which allows us to heavily offset costs for the conference. So if you go ahead and register as a dues paying member and then sign up for the conference, you will have access to attend for pretty much free. You just have to do a little bit of work to get some funding to travel, but we'll cover registration. On the socials, you can find us on Twitter at NABG Social, on Facebook as NABG Organization. But yeah, primarily reach out to us through our website.
Perfect. Listeners, on behalf of myself and my missing but favorite co-host, thank you so much for tuning in to another exciting episode of the Geo Trip. We'll be back next month with another installment, but until then, you can follow us on Twitter at GeoTrip Podcast. And I'm going to call this Twitter for as long as possible because it's Mama named it Twitter. I'm calling it Twitter. I do not recognize X. Signing out. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.